That's gonna be.
Good afternoon, everyone. If anybody's waiting, it's not yet 2 o'clock. It's 1:56 p.m. I'm going to go live in 4 more minutes. But we're going to be doing some dot art today, dot journaling. So I'm just going to set up over here and make sure that you can see what we're going to be doing today. And I do have some fun results from last week's live that I also wanted to share in case people are coming back from last week and want to see what I made. Can you please get my laptop, Mira? Thank you. Okay, what we need today for the connecting dots is a dot journal. And I'll go over the supplies. And today I have to be really mindful of time because we have a Zoom meeting, a very important Zoom meeting today at 2:50. So I need to be absolutely sure I get offline at 2:45. Okay, so I'm just logging onto my laptop so that when folks join in, I'm able to read and respond to any questions you may have, any comments. And I'm using a new mic today, so if you have any feedback on the mic, I would appreciate that too. Because a number of times, actually last time when I did a live video for people who reported not being able to hear me, and I wasn't sure if it was a glitch in the system or if that actually improves the sound quality or not. So if you have any feedback on the sound quality of today's live video, please do let me know. The sound quality of today's live video. Okay, it's 1:58, 2 more minutes, and we're going to get started. I'm also very excited about my online print classes that I'm about to launch later in June. So that'll be fun. And I apologize if you can see all these wires. I just realized there are wires coming in your view. That's not a good thing for you to see. Let me just get the wires out of your view. All right, much better. Okay, if you're here, if you're watching me, I would love if you just said hi on the chat. This is going to be such a Zen activity to do today. And I will share what I was talking about earlier in terms of the exercise we did last week on the YouTube Live, and also something that I did right before coming online to do this live video, which was crazy making really, but I'll share more about that in a minute. All right, it's 2 o'clock. So here we are to do some dot journaling today. But before we do the dot journaling, I did want to share from the YouTube Live I did last week where we did some watercolor backgrounds and doodling on top. This is what I ended up turning those doodles into. So this was, if you remember, one whole sheet that I had done with the yellows transitioning into the green. And I doodled on top of that. Then I added a lot of stars and sequins, and I don't know if you can see the light catching them, but it's a really happy card. And I put the sentiment on, being happy never goes out of style. So I think whoever gets this, I hope it brings a smile to their face. And then the other one that I did, I wrote choose happy or put on choose happy from Simon Says stamp. It's the reverse sentiment strips. And again, added a lot of cool sequins on that. So they glimmer and shine. And then this was the one where I used the thick washi tape, and it left a lot of white in between the paint, and I didn't know what to do with that. It just did not look right to me. So I ended up painting it black and then adding embellishments like in this one. And in this one, I just added some white dots to kind of make it a more cohesive design. And then again, use the same sentiment strips, the reverse sentiment strips, and these cards were done. So these are the 4 that I did from the last YouTube live session from last Friday, and I was eager to see what some of you made, so thank you so much for sharing your creations on Instagram and emailing them to me. The thing that I was doing right before this YouTube live was cleaning up my gel plates. So cleaning up sometimes requires making more prints, which is what ended up happening here. As I was cleaning off the old paint, I added some patterns on top, and while I was getting my plate clean, I was also getting some cool patterns. So I'm doing the gel plate cleaning right now for all different sizes of gel plates that I own, because I'm about to launch some online summer classes in gel plate printing. So I will be notifying you about that very soon. All right, coming to dot journaling today. So we have a journal that basically is full of dots. And if you don't have a journal like this, you can simply take a plain sheet of paper and make your own dots. Just take a ruler and just have put dots with a pencil or with a pen as you wish. And they should be the same number of units apart. So if you choose 1 centimeter apart, just keep going down the page 1 centimeter down, and you'll have your own dot journal. And I usually do the same pattern in a repetitive way, and this is what it ends up being. But for today's lesson, I figured that I would show you a couple of different ways of doing this so that you would have a page full of different designs, and that might give you some ideas on doing some of your own doodling. And some of them seem really complex. They actually start out pretty simple, and then I just keep adding details. Like this one, I didn't feel like adding any details in this, so this is kind of it just stayed simple. But you can make it as detailed as you want. This was a 2.5-hour exercise one evening, and it was very therapeutic for me to just sit down. My husband was watching TV. I didn't want to watch the screen. I was listening, but at the same time I was doodling too. So it's really therapeutic for me to do something like this. The pens I'm going to use today, I'll use a couple of different ones. I have mostly the Pigma Micron, and then I have one of these Pilot Razor Point. I will link to them so you have a way of buying these particular ones. Whenever I run out of ink in these, I always buy more, because this really is a brand I trust, and they do last a while. So, and they come in a lot of different sizes, which is nice. So they go from all the way to thick to very thin. So today we'll start with a 05, a number 5. And all I'm going to do is follow the dots. I call my journal Connecting Dots for that reason, because we're just going to be following the dots. And I think what I want to do is start off with making little squares. So just joining 4 dots together, and because they are spaced equally, you end up getting squares. I do not use rulers or any other kinds of measurement devices when doing this, because usually I'm sitting in bed or I'm sitting on the couch. I'm not at my workstation when I'm doing my journal, my dot journal. It's more of a, okay, I am present with the family and I'm having conversations, but at the same time, I am doing something that relaxes me. Or maybe we're not having family conversations and one person's watching TV and they just need to have a body present next to them. And that's what happens. So I'm just going to do 2 rows of each design so that you can see how it, when you end up repeating it, how it might look. And again, these are dots. There's so much scope here, so much potential for creativity that, you know, anything you make on this is great. And again, as with all of my live sessions, I do want to remind you, it's about de-stressing yourself, not adding more stress to your life. So just remember that as you do this dot journaling at home, that it's not about stressing yourself. So I have this basic design for my first pattern, and I want to do a diagonal here. So I'm just joining the bottom right to the top right in my second row. Bottom right corner, first row, to the top right corner, second row, as a connector. And sometimes this is the last stroke I will do on the page in terms of joining my design so that it all comes together. But since I'm doing, I smudged that a bit. Since I'm doing only two rows of each design, I just wanted to show how it kind of all comes together, so to speak. Going in the same thing with the left side in this one, and I honestly do not have a plan when I start out with this. I never do, and actually every single page in this dot journal has a mistake, but the designs are so intricate at the end of it that you can't really tell that there was a mistake. And a lot of the design elements start shaping up because of the mistakes I make, which is interesting too. So over here, I actually want to join these two together now. Now again, I could have just joined all of them at the get-go, but I didn't know how the pattern would shape up and what I was doing next. So I'm going to add some stripes. I'll take my fine point pen now, and I'm just going to add some stripes in here. That kind of gives it a shadow effect. Very intricate lines. And as we're heading into summer, I think I'm not going to have a lot of time to do this kind of journaling. So I'm actually glad that I'm being able to do it today. It just makes my mind stop. The only thing I'm focused on is how am I connecting the next couple of dots, which is very freeing actually. It's very liberating to be able to just have that. Now that just seems to be hanging over there, doesn't it? So let's just fix that. So that has an end point also. Okay, that looks like chairs on a beach. I think that's where my head is at. Okay, so I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to make a diagonal from the top right corner to the bottom left corner in the top row. So it's the same square, the top row, just joining, making another diagonal there. And that's how patterns become intricate. It's when you start doing all these joining lines in between and kind of playing around. Really, that's really what I'm doing, is just playing around to see what will work, what might work, what won't work. And at the end of the day, everything works, because what you're doing is a repetitive pattern. So there really is no way it doesn't work. So you see how we started out with just squares, and it's already become something really intricate. Now to add more visual interest, I usually do one patch that is really, really dark. And for me, it seems like for this design, it's going to be this one. Triangle at the bottom. And I'm just switching between pens for areas where I want to go in with more ink versus areas where I want it to be really fine lines. I'm just filling that in, and suddenly it brings the pattern to life. It just gets a different look to it. So I did an experiment this week and did not remind people via my newsletter that I'm doing a YouTube live, and the experiment was to see how many folks who follow me just on social media are able to get the reminder in time to be able to join this live. So it'll be interesting to see how many people actually end up watching this live versus how many people see the recorded version of it, the replay version. Okay, so I like it, but I feel like this area here needs something more. I think I'll go with some vertical stripes. And I'll just do 2. I don't want the whole thing to be filled up. So just 2 on the top squares. Just some additional visual interest and depth in the design. And then over here, I think I'll do the same thing to balance it out with 1. And thus a square becomes a rectangle in your perception of it visually. Okay, so that's the first kind of design that you could do. Let's do another one. So this time I want to do kind of half triangles. So just joining these squares diagonally instead of making squares at the outset like I did with the first one. And we'll see where this takes us. There are many, many, many people who do amazing jobs to just, connecting dots. It's so therapeutic to watch their videos, and there's something about it. It's relaxing and it's mesmerizing at the same time. Hello, Claudia. Thank you so much for joining. I decided I would do some different patterns today and not really have the same pattern throughout the page, but kind of show how you can really have fun by just connecting dots in different ways. Because as I was saying earlier, this entire page is full of potential for doing whatever your heart desires. Isn't it nice to have that? It's not a blank page staring at you. It's a page that is full of potential. So I did a zigzag. It's like a chevron design over here. And I did, let's count, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'll do 4 over here too. So we have some element of consistency throughout. And as with the earlier one, I do the skeleton of the design first, and then I kind of go in and figure out where I want to add more elements with my finer pen. So I'll add some shading, some more black lines, some dots, depending on what I'm feeling like doing any particular day. But it's mostly all just repetitive. And that's really the key, is when you start making your design, what helps you relax is the nature of its repetitiveness. That's what makes it relaxing. At least for me, that's what makes it relaxing to me. Because then I'm not thinking about anything else. I'm just focusing on my pattern making. Claudia says, I wish I could get a job making patterns. Wouldn't that be fun? So for this one, let's see, we did lots of lines and some shading in the previous one. So how about, I like doing lines though. But where to join, which dot to join to which dot is the question, isn't it? So I think for this, I'm going to go right through the middle over here and join the first row to the second row at the bottom vertex, and do the same thing here.
I was thinking of a vertices.
I was doing vertices in school, so I was inclined to say vertices, and then I realized it's a vertex, the bottom vertex. Okay. So we joined that. Now I feel like I need to join this to close it out. So I'm just going to close this design out on both ends. So it has a finite. And see, that's how designs get made. Now that line is it wasn't very clear, right? I just accidentally did a double. So now that's going to become a design element. That's what I was saying earlier, that all of the pages in this journal, I have made a mistake. And that mistake has become a design element. Because ultimately it's about repeating the mistake effectively in the right order for it to be imperceptible and become part of your pattern. So if you make a mistake, just make sure you know what you made, a mistake where you made a mistake, and make sure you repeat it. It's the only time that you'll probably hear somebody say, remember the mistake you made so that you can repeat it, not so that you can avoid it. But really, I mean, I have every single page there's something that went wrong. And I kid you not, it's usually towards the end when the whole pattern has already been established. And then I'll do something, because it becomes too complicated, I'll do something that's not supposed to be. And I'm hard-pressed to find my mistakes when I go back and look for them, but they're there. Trust me, they're there. Like, I'm trying to see what happened here, how this became, well, must have done something. I've done something here. I know that I did something wrong here. I can't find it right now. But there is something there's something here that's not quite following the pattern. But that's what I'm saying. When you have a whole page that's full of patterns and they're all repetitive, your eye is going to trick you. Your mind, you're not going to be able to detect that one little mistake you made. So again, don't fret over it. Don't stress over it. This is a de-stressing activity. It is not meant to introduce stress into your life. It's meant to take away all the stress you might be feeling. So do not worry if your pen strokes decide to do something that your brain was not quite wanting your hand to do. Okay, so we're just going over that mistake that I made, darkening these columns over here between the two rows. And then I think over here I want to introduce some lines. I just don't know what kind of lines I want to introduce. And I want to do them just in one part and not cover up the whole thing. So I think I'll do alternate. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to do some verticals on this side. And then on the bottom row, I'm going to do the verticals on this side. And I think that will make for an interesting pattern. And you could also do alternates another way, where you do alternates in the same row instead of the way I'm doing it. You don't have to do any of what I'm doing, actually. This is just kind of showing you what can be done in a dot journal. And if you don't have one, you can just use a simple blank sheet of paper and a ruler and just create dots that are equidistant. And you'll have a guideline using which you can make your own patterns. And really the point of this is nothing. That's the beauty of it. This is not going to turn into a card. This is not going to turn into a framed piece of work. This truly is, I really feel this about journaling. It truly is for me and me alone. So if you're looking for some me time and some quiet time, or you just want your brain to rest, I highly encourage trying this out. It really is so calming. Okay, that looks good. Now in this one, I'm going to introduce some shading, some more black. The first one was accidental. This one will be more deliberate. Just making a line between that to create like a smaller triangle. And I really should pick up my other pen to do this. And just filling that in. you can see how if there's a whole page, an entire page full of this design, how dramatic it would look. It has a very modern edge to it, but it could also take on a very ancient feel depending on what pattern you choose to make by connecting these dots. And this can be done with lots of colorful markers too. If you don't like boring, plain black and white, you could certainly introduce colors into your dot journaling. It's just easier for me to grab 2 pens and this journal and just, be. Not have to think about the color wheel or what colors look good together and what don't. I just have my 2 black pens and I can just sit and doodle until my fingers start hurting holding these. I was watching, I don't know how many of you watch Gina K. I was watching her today. She does these live YouTube videos on stamping and card making. And Mira and I had been doing this online card camp, online card classes, that's what they're called. Spring card camp that ended, we did Spring Card Camp 1 and Spring Card Camp 2. So it was our morning ritual to get up and watch the instructors show us some tricks and tips for card making, and then that ended. So 40 days, and now we don't have that anymore. So we started watching Gina K yesterday. I'm going to go on to my 3rd pattern, and I'm going to make it more like a U or rounded. I'm very intrigued by doing curves between dots. So we've been watching her, and it's fun to see Gina crack out some really old techniques. The one we saw today was about using crayons and distress inks, so a resist technique, and it was so interesting what she did with the crayons. Mira got a real laugh out of that. So we've decided that since she doesn't have distress inks and I don't have crayons, that we would barter. We would actually share, not barter, but we would do a project together. So I'll share that on my Instagram once we are able to successfully do that project. Kind of just trying to wing it, but I don't think that's the way to go. I really should be connecting the dot to the dot because the U's need that kind of uniformity. Oh, this will be interesting because now I can connect it many different ways. Then I'm going to stick with that linear connection here. This is some really simple stuff I'm showing you. It's not complex at all. It's just repetitive. But if you're doing it with me, I'm hoping that you can feel relaxation come to you. So for this one, since I know what I'm doing now, I can actually make that line. I'm getting confused over here. I'm confusing myself. You really have to watch how I'm doing this. Sometime around the half length of this page is when I get majorly confused, and that's when things kind of go haywire, but it all works out in the end, and that's really the only part I care about. So this will be interesting because I have a curved element and then some straight lines. So what can I do here with my fine pen? Let's see. I think I'm going to go for some verticals here in the middle. That seems like a natural extension of this design. And then I'm going to let this bottom be the way it is. But then I do want to add some black, some darker elements to this. So these connecting areas that I have here will become the darker areas. And again, it's all about symmetry and repetitiveness and being creative. This is art without purpose. The only purpose is to relax yourself. I might need a nap after this. I do actually realize, and this is true, I do realize I sleep much better the evenings that I'm able to do this. It just calms me down, my mind. I tend to get really anxious. My anxiety starts building up in the evenings when everything's quiet and dark. All those, everything I've heard in the news it just settles, and that's what makes it hard for me to fall asleep. And I really have noticed that whenever I'm able to do this in bed before sleeping, it really does help me sleep faster. I'm going to leave this be. Okay, so now to add some finer details in this one. Now I have a feeling that if I connect this down here, that would seem not forced. It seems a very natural connection too, because it's all rigid over here and we're staying away from the curved part. Now carry this over to the bottom row. And as I say every single week that I've done these live videos, no matter what the technique I'm doing, I am guided by intuition more than anything else, and I urge you to listen to yourself too. Your intuition will guide you into creating. It really will. Kids do that. They're not trained, and I witness that every single day. They have such an intuitive sense of what works and what doesn't. And of course, training helps, it fine-tunes your instincts to some extent, but really, if you listen to yourself, you can't go wrong. And again, in something like this, what can go wrong? It's your creativity. It's what you want to make. Oh, I'm glad I was able to get one curved design in. Done a lot of linears in this, not as many curved ones. And you can see how some of my lines are wonky. Mira, can you say out loud what you need? You need a card. You can have it after I'm done here. She's getting ready for Father's Day. There's a lot of preparation happening in our house for Father's Day since yesterday. I'm going to leave this one be. I think this is a good point to end this one. And then let's move on to the next. Okay, so for this one, let's do some X's. Oh, this is going to get complicated so fast. I can sense a mistake coming on. But we'll deal with it when it comes, when it happens. It will happen, I know. Thank goodness I'm just doing sample designs and this isn't the entire page. For this particular design, I probably would start with it and then end it 6 rows down, just because the sheer amount of focus and skill it takes, not to mention the hand pressure. Oh, where's that dot? Okay. You can see I'm starting from the dot at the bottom so that I don't mess up, because if I start at the top, I might not end up at the correct dot. So I'm just starting at the bottom where the empty dot is, because the rest of it is all connected already. And I'll do one more row of this. This is really tiring on my hands. But this will end up being probably one of the more intricate patterns.
Looks really good.
Looks really good. Thank you. I'll do one more row of it. Oops. It's okay. So I would love to hear from you guys about what you might want to see on this channel on YouTube Live for future weeks. There's specific interest in specific techniques. I'm happy to do that. Claudia says, not a mistake. I like to tell myself I meant to do that. I do that all the time, Claudia. You are a person after my own heart. Yes, I always meant to do that. There are no mistakes in art. I really don't think there are. And I am pretty sure that a lot of people disagree with me, especially those who've taken that as a discipline. I haven't, so it's easy for me to say that. But
looks like bees net for like the honey.
oh yeah, but that's those are hexagons, right?
Yeah.
All right, now to make this one intricate. I'm just going to make circles where they intersect. So yeah, I was saying that, you know, somebody who studied it, fine art or any discipline, will probably disagree and say that yes, there is a methodology, there is a reason we do certain things, and there's a reason we don't. And I completely understand that, because I study journalism, and yes, there's a way we do things. There's a way of asking the questions in a certain order, and there are protocols to be followed, as with every subject. But art is such a big form of self-expression that I feel that if it becomes too bound by rules, it doesn't stay accessible. And that's kind of my charge, is to make sure that art remains accessible to everyone, that people feel confident in their abilities to create something unique, because they can, everyone can. I really firmly believe that we intuitively, instinctively can make something that is pleasing to the eye. And that really is what is art. It's a form of self-expression that's pleasant to look at, isn't it? So as much as there are techniques, and you know, I'll be teaching those online summer courses that I'm putting together, and I will be talking about technique, and I will be talking about the hows, the whats, the whys. But I assure you that with every single explanation in those classes will come the disclaimer of there is no wrong way of doing this, there is no one way of doing this. There's your way, there's my way. And neither of us need to be right. It's just different. You know, you could learn the basics of how to use a gel plate. You could learn the basics of how to brayer the color on. And then you can decide, you know what, I am not going to use the brayer. I'm just going to use my fingers and I'll do some finger painting on the gel plate, and that's totally fine. There's no rule against that. So that's what I'm trying to advocate is, you know, do things your way, do what gives you joy. At the end of the day, it's your creation. Make it work for you because you matter. We get so bogged down in caring about what others might think about what we make that we forget the most important person that we need to be doing this art for is us, ourselves. So I just want you to remember that, especially if you're taking any of my online classes. I am advocating self-care through art. And that comes from not giving a hoot about what anybody else thinks and really just doing that which pleases you. And since I'm not talking about what I'm doing here, but you can kind of see, I'm just kind of running rampant with no design in mind, just kind of going in where the empty spaces are and filling them in and repeating them enough times for it to show me, to reveal a pattern, so to speak. Okay, so there are places where I had space for just one line. There are spaces where I had enough space to do 2 lines. But that's okay. It's, again, repetitive. So it doesn't matter. That's you. And then in here, I'm just going to go in, since this seems to be the middle point, connect these vertically. Just going to do a time check here. We have 7 more minutes in this 45-minute session. If you have any questions, comments, ideas, feedback, please let me know in the comments. Oh, look, that became a square with an X in the middle. Huh. That's, Mira, look at this pattern. Look at how this kind of revealed itself. I don't know, it's just joining lines.
That doesn't look like a square. No.
Well, it doesn't look like the X's. It kind of has a square in the middle now. That is so cool. I love when things like that happen. I wasn't meaning to make that, but I actually was. I just didn't know I was meaning to make that. Okay, on to my next pattern, and I think this might as well be the last one for today. We're going to go straight lines, 2 rows of dots, straight lines down. And if you folks are interested, I am going to start. I know I said this last time too, but I didn't hear back from anyone. I think I'll just do it. I'll start doing it and then see if there's interest, instead of asking if there's interest, especially if people don't know what I'm talking about. I am going to start an Inklings party on my blog. So when I post the replay of this video, I will add a link there using which you will have the ability to share your creations that you did as a result of these YouTube live videos, so that I get to see your absolutely awesome masterpieces. So I'll start doing that as of this week. So YouTube allows me to post a replay 48 hours after it has actually been a live session, which means that I actually don't get to be able to post it to my blog until Sunday, since today is Friday. So Sunday is the earliest that I can post a blog with a link that will take you back to this video, and it's then called a replay. So on Sunday is usually when I send my newsletter out, and Sunday evening or Monday morning, depending on how my weekend went. And that's when I can include that link to the blog, to the Inklings party where you can upload your creations. Oh, so how will this work? Leave one and then do another? Yes, let's do that. Okay, so you see how I have to figure out what I'm doing here, and I might actually end up connecting one I don't intend to. but I'm leaving one blank in each row, one vertical line blank, and joining two that are next to each other. So this one's going to be left hanging, which is not good. So that's, oh, actually it would have been fine because this one was hanging too. Okay, just for the sake of symmetry, we'll do that here, and we'll do that here. Okay, so now we have a repetitive pattern. Claudia, you're so kind. Thank you so much for coming to each of these sessions. I really do appreciate having you here, and it's unfortunate that we don't get to talk and interact, but it's nice to have you nevertheless. So let's see, what can we do over here? I'm gonna get my fine pen out as I'm thinking about this. I think I want to join this to this. Well, that's kind of awkward. That didn't really do much, did it? Or maybe if I make it a repetitive pattern, let's see where it takes me. So I'm joining this to the empty one and joining these two together. And sometimes, you know, that's I do this where I will connect a dot to another dot with a line, and then I'm like, okay, this didn't do much. But then I start repeating that pattern across the row, and it starts looking not that terrible. But then, of course, that one thing leads to the next, right? So now that I have that, maybe there's a pattern emerging here. Join this to make it a complete triangle, sideways triangle. Was I supposed to do this here? No, I wasn't. Okay. And then over here, what if I did the same thing where I connected this so it becomes an upside down triangle? And you see how a pattern, a simple pattern that started out with just lines, starts becoming something so complex. It's quite fascinating, this entire dot connecting, this art of doing that. Okay, I have a feeling I want to do this. So I'm just going to join these two here, continue over, make that line. Now this has one off. Kind of looks like a house. This is becoming more of a kaleidoscope than anything else. It needs a lot of dark areas and stripes, I feel, to actually make it, to have it amount to something. Do this over here. Okay. Now join that. Okay, so now it feels more cohesive. So I'll take my other pen now and fill it in. It's 2:44. I gotta log out in a minute. So I'm just going to show you what I'll do, and I'll share the rest of it on social media later. But email me, write a comment here, let me know what all you want to see on these YouTube lives so that we have something to chit-chat about on a weekly basis, and that I'm able to make some time to do art for myself. You're able to make some time to do art for yourself. Everybody goes into the weekend happy and relaxed. Do let me know. And for those of you watching the replay after Sunday, it gives you motivation to join me for a live on Friday. Just thickening that line over there, and then I'll probably do some stripes over here. But I gotta close the live now since we do have a Zoom meeting to attend. I really appreciate your joining me today. I hope you enjoy the dot journaling and seeing just how diverse the patterns can be. I'll flip through this one more time so you can see all the different patterns that I've created over the course of the last, I think, 2 months that I've had this. Not every single page was completed in one sitting. Some of these took a while. I don't like this one at all. I do remember this was a really bad day for me, and that's kind of the form my self-expression took.
Bad day.
Well, it was in March. It was the end of March. I think we'd been home for like 18 or 19 days at that time, and it just felt like it was so long. And now it's been almost 3 months since we've been home.
And it doesn't feel like so.
No, it doesn't, because now we've adjusted to a new routine. So as you can see, there's a lot of variation. There's so many different patterns. You could go from the very complex to the very simple and really have fun with it. Like this page is so simple, but I just love, this is what my day was like that day, and that's what came out on paper. So just enjoy yourselves and take care, have fun. Your mental health is important, and art really does help with that. So I hope to see you again next week, and watch out for the newsletter, and that will have more details about what we're going to be doing next week. And I will also be sending out information about the online art sessions, so stay tuned for that. Thanks so much for joining me today. Have a lovely, lovely weekend.